Thank you. It's quite a challenge to go in the middle and not repeat what other people have said and also not trample on the people coming. I'm going to talk about tagging in search. So it's a social search topic, but I have it on good information that no one in the panel on social search is talking about tagging, so I think I'm okay. My research is really focused on search user interfaces and computational linguistics, and I'm getting very interested in social media as part of the School of Information. A lot of our students are not only interested in social media, they create a lot of it. And it's a very timely topic, but I also think it points us towards what's going to happen in the future. So the two main points for my talk are that massive user behavior is currently aiding search algorithms, and we saw examples of that in Peter and Andre's talks in interesting ways. And so going a little deeper and looking at what the next steps are, I want to examine what's known as tagging or social tagging. So I'll describe what that is, the controversy around it, I think some interesting research questions surrounding social tagging, and some work that we've been doing on creating metadata structures that might be applicable to social tagging. So user-contributed content is exploding in popularity and usage. I have just screenshots of just a few things going on right now. SlideShare was started by my former postdoc, Rashmi Sinha, which is kind of the YouTube of PowerPoint slides. People are donating their PowerPoint content to be shared, teachers and so on. Obviously, we know about Wikipedia, online encyclopedia. There are bookmarking sites that are very popular, hundreds of thousands of users, if not more. Yahoo Answers we saw. There's also more people trying to affect change. So there's this peer-to-patent project, which is an experimental project with the patent office, where individuals from the community will put forward prior art suggestions for patents under consideration. So it's just a really big, and I think a big area that I don't think is a flash in the pan. I think this is actually showing a fundamental change in how information is exchanged. So what's the role between social information, social media, and search? Well, there's this trend that's been happening, I guess, really since '98, according to, I think, Andre's slides, where human behavioral information is being incorporated or baked right into search algorithms. And a really interesting part of this is that in many cases, the actions of many are more powerful than the actions of the individual. So I'll show three examples. One that's been around really since Google started it is using anchor text for improving ranking, although I've been told that Ink2Me was doing this before Google. I'm not sure if that's true. As opposed to author-supplied meta tags. So when the web started, people thought authors could put a tag in their content saying what it's about, but that's very prone to spam. So instead, what happens if, say, I have this web page on how to clean wine stains generally, but I want to know how to clean red wine from carpet. This web page here actually has a hyperlink pointing to this page where the words in the hyperlink are red wine spills on carpet. And similarly, this web page, I've just taken a piece of it out, also links to this page using the terms red wine spills on carpet. So the information in the hyperlinks themselves, that's what we call anchor text, makes a very concise and usually accurate summary of what this page being pointed to is about. And furthermore, the title of this page is Quick Tips for Cleaning Red Wine Stains Generally. It doesn't actually say that it's for carpet, but this, if you're actually interested in that subtopic, you can find that on certain hyperlinks. So this is, obviously people write web pages, so that's user-generated, web pages are user-generated content, but then there's sort of this meta content or implicitly generated content of hyperlinks that help really nail down what a page is about. And anchor text is actually more important than things like PageRank generally. Most people don't realize that. Another way that actions of the many are being used in search ranking is what's called click-through, which is basically after somebody does a query and they scan the results here. This is not anything in particularly interesting, just an example. The question is, which links do they click on? If they click on a link for a query, does that suggest that that's a good link for the query? So Watkins et al. And Eggentine et al. Have done work on this. And these are people in academia doing work in this area. And so it's published, that have found that human selections of links from search results can improve rankings for popular queries at least, not necessarily for unpopular ones, but for common ones. But there's some surprising things about this. It's important not really to look at which link was clicked on, but actually what you have to do is downweight the links that weren't clicked on near that link. So there's some interesting counterintuitive, or it's intuitive when you think about it, but non-obvious things that come out of this kind of work. So this is implicit information. If I search and see results and click or don't click, I'm not trying to help the search engine, but I nevertheless can be. And this only works if you have an aggregate over many, many people. The third example of actions of the many versus the individual helping search results is query autosuggest. So this is becoming, this is a more recent phenomenon, and it's becoming, there's still no true academic or research evidence showing that it works well, but anecdotally, as far as I can tell, people really like this. So this is kind of, I can't show how dynamic it is here, but here in the search box, I've typed the first three letters, B-E-R, and on all the web, some suggestions for terms that have those letters in it appear very quickly. And you'll notice that it doesn't have to begin with those letters. They can also be in the middle, or at least in the middle of a phrase, but starting a word. And if I add one more letter, if I add the K, then it changes what's shown here dynamically. So it's very rapid, dynamic updating is a paradigm that people seem to like. And this actually helps with spelling and so on. If you don't know how to spell Berkshire Hathaway, you don't have to remember how to spell the rest of it. But it's very responsive to what you've typed so far, as opposed to doing a query, getting the results back in a few suggestions. This is suggesting on the fly. And this works, again, based on what lots of other people have typed, as opposed to, say, if we only looked at things I'd typed in the past, if I never typed Berkshire Hathaway, then I wouldn't get this nice help here. Okay, so those are examples of what's happening now. In the future, I think there is a lot of potential value in social tagging. What is social tagging? It's metadata assignment without all the bother. You might think about that. It's spontaneous, easy, low cognitive overhead is a key to it. I'll show an example here. This is from Flickr. This is a photograph of Fleet Week over in San Francisco. And these are what are called tags that somebody has assigned. So what are tags? Tags are just labels that people assign to indicate content on the site, or content of the item that they're labeling. They're usually used in the context of social media, so it's for information that's going to be shared among lots of people. If you're not sharing it, you can tag for yourself, but really where tagging has become popular is when you share with friends or just share with the community more generally. So this person's written Fleet Week, air races, aircraft, air races. We'll come back to the format of what he wrote in a minute. But what's really important about tags is that they're really, really easy. It's very low mental overhead to just type anything, just the first things that come to mind to say what's in this, as opposed to, for example, having to look through a giant taxonomy and pick just the right thing and have everyone agree on the taxonomy ahead of time. You can do whatever tags you want. You don't have to get anyone's approval. That's what makes them easy, and that's what makes them popular. Here's an example from Delicious, which is a bookmarking site. So if you find a page you like, you click on something in your browser and you tag it. You say, tag this for me. And so here are some tags. These are the most popular pages currently on Delicious. Here's some of the tags that have been assigned: math, visualization, education, science, recipes, food, curry. So depending on, some sites only allow single words with no white space or single terms. Others allow multiple terms with white space. Here's an example of, so museums are now experimenting with, can we have individuals help us tag our content? And so if you look at an image at the Powerhouse Museum in Australia, you can help classify what it's about, although it looks like there's some spam there. So tagging is controversial. Why is tagging controversial? Well, it's kind of a fight between people that really care about information being really right and people that are kind of more bohemian, let it all hang out. So some people complain, well, it's sloppy, it's disorganized, it's incorrect, it just can't ever be useful. Whereas others are more, power to the people. If you have a lot of people putting information in, it's going to add up to something. It's easy, so lots of people will do it. If it's hard, people won't. And it's cheap. You get it for free. You don't have to pay anyone. And you also get the knowledge of a lot of people. So that's why it's controversial, is really the people saying that this isn't valid annotation versus others saying, oh, it's fine, and it gets the job done, and if it made it more work, people wouldn't do it. There's a really nice paper by Trant and Wyman where they actually did an experiment where they had images like this one, and they asked people to label it with what information is there. And so this is a quote. This is from the original curator's description of this image. Couched in the soft velvety nap of the platinum paper, composed in the languid lines of Art Nouveau, and softly focused, this photograph of New York's Madison Square employs many elements of pictorialism and so on. So that's actually very informative and interesting, but it doesn't actually say anything about what's in the picture. These are tags that they had in their experiment, the different tags that people assigned, like 20th century, abstract, octopus, so things about how it looks, pedestrians, things about what are in the picture. And when this sort of task was given to a professional curator, a professional labeler, she has a quote in the paper that says, "Everything I know isn't in the picture." So I haven't been trained to put labels about the actual elements in the photograph. My job is to describe it in this more impressionistic fashion. So as a professional, I would never have made labels like snow and pedestrians. So you can see there's sort of a disconnect between some of the formal ideas about labeling and sort of the more informal ones that people expect, that everyday people expect to see. So for me, I see tagging as an opportunity. For me, it's at last content-oriented metadata in the large. Because most metadata efforts out there before, where you try to get everyone to agree what the metadata should be, end up with a very small set of categories like author, date, publisher. And usually no one succeeds in tackling the subject matter. What is this about? Because you can't get anyone to agree on the metadata on the ontology. But I think the action for navigation and browsing and search is to have the subject metadata, the content metadata labeled. That's what people really want to browse on. They don't really want to browse by publisher most of the time. They want to browse by, I want the images with the pedestrians and the snow that's shaped like an octopus. But that's not what the standard curation will do. So another thing, and I'm going to talk about this a bit more in a few minutes, is that tags are inherently faceted, meaning you can assign multiple different labels about the meaning simultaneously, and that's what people do, rather than placing them into one folder, one vertical hierarchy. And the concepts are assigned for many different content categories simultaneously. You don't put the image in just one place. Now the problems are that haphazard assignments lead to problems with synonymy, homonymy, unpredictability. As we saw in this image, the author was trying to write the same thing multiple different ways because he wasn't sure which way people would search to get to the stuff. So he doesn't know if it's SF Bay, San Francisco. He's trying variations, singular, plural. He's having to guess. And that's partly because the Flickr tagging interface, only the author, I believe, can tag, and there's no guidance about what tags to use. Other tagging problems are sometimes they're fleeting in meaning or very personal, like to read or to do. They might not cover all the concepts. They're disorganized, and they're not professional, although I don't think that matters. But the disorganization, I think, is a problem. So there's a lot of interesting research questions that we can tackle for tags and search. How to improve tag convergence, getting people to use the same tags to describe the same concepts. How to group tags meaningfully. How to eliminate uninteresting tags. I actually think there's a big role both for user interface design and for automated algorithms, computational linguistic and other algorithms, to clean up the tags and to organize the tags. And there's been some evidence that the interface does have a big effect on what sorts of tags people produce. So if we look at Delicious for tagging this page, if I decide I'm going to label or save and tag this page, what it does is recommend tags that other people have already assigned to it, and then also show me other popular tags. So it actually guides me towards tags that have already been used, and I can pick the ones that I think are right or add my own. And this probably leads to more conversion. There's also effects of interface. We can see in this graph I took from a paper by a group at IBM, where they had a system with tags, and then you can see this is the number of tags that are being assigned per post, and there's suddenly a huge jump. What does that happen? Well, they changed the interface, so they made the tags more visible to people generally, so it can have a big effect. There's also a question about expertise. So if we have an image here of an office, and people have assigned tags like office, desk, plants, windows, shadows, so like the ESP game, the Von On game that someone mentioned earlier, the question is, how do you get real expert information? Who will identify the plant species in this image? So if someone will say plants, but they won't say what kind of plant it is, I think there's a lot of interesting things you could do, like farming out things to experts in plants, for example, once you have the word plant. What's the relationship of social tags to automated content extraction? If we use standard natural language processing or information retrieval techniques, does that overlap with the tags, or does it produce something different? Are tags more informative or differently informative than other kinds of labeling methods? Do people say something different with tags than they do with other kinds of annotation? There's also research for tags in society, but I'm going to leave that to the panel. I just want to show I'm not super narrow. So going back to research questions for tags and search, there's a question about how can we use tags for browsing and navigation. Right now, I don't think they're well utilized in the interfaces to social media sites. At Delicious, you can click on a tag, and then you just see all the things that have that tag and maybe some related tags. And also, there's a lot of similar words that are not being grouped together. Delicious has something called bundles, but the navigation isn't good, and it's not well thought out. The Dog Ear Project, and there was a company called Raw Sugar that were trying to group things intelligently, although that company seems to have changed what it's doing. So one solution is to organize tags into facet hierarchies and use faceted navigation. So what is that? That's something that we've been promoting for a long time here. The idea is if you have something like a recipe, you assign multiple different categories to it rather than placing it in one spot in the hierarchy. So rather than just saying it's a cooking method and this is stir-fried dishes, something can be classified as stir-fried, as a main course, as a Thai cuisine, and you can access it different ways. It's a flexible, dynamic way for collection navigation. We've been investigating and promoting this since like 1999, and it's now widely used on e-commerce sites. Digital libraries, image collections, and so on are following, and actually even search verticals like in Google Co-op are using the idea. And we have an open source implementation. People are free to download. Let me show examples. eBay is using it in their Express. So here it's an easy way to say the product type you want, the size you want, brand, style, color, and anything other attributes as well. The big part of using faceted navigation is making the interface understandable and not making it complicated. It's starting to be used in digital libraries, so NCSU has a stab at it. This is output of our system on a fine arts collection where you can do very complicated queries just by clicking on links. So find under animals and plants trees, and then villas, and then rivers, and find, and then group the results by what country they're from. So it's using metadata that's been grouped in a meaningful way, so here are the facets, to browse and navigate and discover in a collection. And here's another example. And actually Google Co-op is now for certain verticals like health and vacations and so on. They have these facets, drug uses, side effects, interactions, and so on when I search on a medical term. And it's not the full faceted navigation. Once you pick one category, you can't pick others. But it's a move in that direction. So there's a lot of advantages to faceted navigation, but the disadvantage has always been where do you get the facets from? Where do you get the metadata from? And this is where I think tags comes in. So we actually have an algorithm to create facet hierarchies from textual descriptions, which I'm not going to go into, but just some examples. Here is some recipe input, and here's the output of our algorithm. It's not perfect. This is the raw output, so we should edit a bit. But we see we have flavors, vegetables, dishes, meals, pasta, fruit, pastry, shellfish. So it does actually quite a nice job. Here's the same algorithm run on biology journal titles, where we get medical specialties, biological science, body part, condition. So it works pretty well. I need to edit it a little bit when it comes out. But it leverages the structure of WordNet. I don't think I have time to go through the algorithm, but there's a paper on the URL I have at the end. So will Castanet work on tags? Well, we don't know yet, but there was a class project done by a couple of the iSchool students a couple of years back on captions from mobile phones. So for things like this, so really short captions like very scary Xmas tree and so on. And they had to remove the proper nouns, but after they did, they got output that looked like this, which is kind of promising. We haven't put it into our system yet, but it seems it's promising. So in conclusion, the actions of the many are a boon for improving search algorithms. And social tagging is, in my view, a terrific way to get good content metadata where we can't get it before. And another great thing about it is you don't have to argue with people about what's right and what's wrong. And we can use what's there, use algorithms to find useful generalizations and patterns and so on, and get the human work easily. I think automated techniques can do a lot to help clean them up and make them more useful. And just lastly, tagging is an inherently social phenomenon, part of social media, which, as I said, I think is going to just continue to grow in importance. So thank you very much.
Thank you. A couple of questions.
How about here? Here?
I'm just curious about something. Like, have there been studies where people have indexed documents additionally with, say, delicious tags and shown that it improves recall?
There haven't been very many studies on tagging at all. I read, I think, all the academic work in a 4-day period.
Oh.
So people have done a little bit of work comparing, say, TF-IDF weights to tags and found that there wasn't that much overlap.
Oh.
But there's very little that's been done systematically to say, does it help with search over, say, just pulling keywords out of the documents. For images where you don't have any words, of course, it helps. Right?
Yeah, I would imagine precision might take a hit, but recall might help if you index these additional things.
Yeah, I mean, my focus really, I think, is for navigating as opposed to just searching. Usually if you want the Eiffel Tower, you type Eiffel Tower, you're done. But if you want to see what's in common, find me all of the images that about battles at the turn of the century that involve, dogs, then this sort of thing is a lot easier than querying if you don't have a lot of full text.
I see. One last question. Like when you spoke about how to make use of tags and click-throughs to improve search, do you think there's an inherent Google bias, if you will, to the sorts of things that will get tagged and to the sorts of things that will get clicked on?
I don't think there's a Google bias towards what gets tagged because most of the sites where the tagging happens are not, people aren't going there via search engines.
Oh.
Flickr people use because they share images with their family and friends. Delicious people use Delicious. You know, if you tag a page, it's true that maybe you use a search engine to get to that page, but actually the really useful Delicious things are trendy things or the really hard to find thing that people with your hobby really like. You know, you're more likely to find that with the tags often than with the search because it's not the most popular thing. Yeah.
One more question.
Try to get back on time. Yeah.
It occurs to me that if you'd matched what you're doing there with entity extraction and tried entity extraction out of the tags, you might be able to do some very interesting things. Has that been tried?
Not yet. I think there's been a little bit of work on morphological normalization, and but trying to parse these things is pretty complicated. You have to recognize SF-Bay. SF is actually an entity, so I think it'll push the envelope on entity extraction algorithms. But I certainly think it's a great idea, and I know people have thought about doing it. I haven't seen published work yet on doing it.
Thank you so much, Marti.